Good morning, students. Let us start the class now. Yesterday, we were discussing about the stability of the voltage divider bias, and I was telling you that out of all the biasing circuits, this particular circuit, VDB or voltage divider bias circuit, is highly stable. Let me have a small recapitulation of whatever we discussed yesterday. You are seeing this particular circuit on the screen. Let me annotate it. This particular circuit, you are seeing it on the screen. This is the most popular voltage divider bias circuit. Now, as you already know, our goal is to keep VCE at half of VCC. That means we want to keep the transistor exactly in the middle region of the active region, so that it is exactly half on or half off. It is like the glass which is half full or half empty. Let us say in the glass there is half of water. You will not say the glass is empty. At the same time, you will not say the glass is full. You will say that either the glass is half full, or you will also say that the glass is half empty. Same way, if the transistor is kept in the middle of the active region, it is half on. So when we give a slight input, gradually it will either turn on or turn off. When it is turning on or turning off, it is turning on and off up to VCC, which means at the input, if we give a small voltage, let us say we give millivolts at input, at the output we will get a swing in volts. That is how, if the transistor is kept in the middle of the active region, we will be using it as an amplifier. Actually, transistor is not a voltage amplifier, it is simply a switch. By using a larger supply voltage, we are using it as a switch and we are using it as a voltage amplifier. Transistor actually is a current amplifier in the sense it has got a factor called beta, and that beta is nothing but IC divided by IB. We can set the base current at microampere and we will get the collector current at milliampere. That way we can say that transistor is a current amplifier, it is not a voltage amplifier. When we want to use it as a voltage amplifier, we will exactly keep it in the middle of the active region. That is the primary goal of biasing the transistor. Now, as I've been telling you, we want the transistor to be biased exactly in the middle region. So we want this VCE to be half of VCC. Let us say we set this resistor values in such a way that it is exactly at the half of VCC. Now, we had seen the problems with the earlier two circuits, base bias and emitter bias. They are also called as fixed bias and self bias respectively. So, in those circuits, we had seen that due to any reason, maybe due to the change in beta, or maybe due to the change in VBE itself, or maybe due to the change in temperature, if at all there is a change in collector current, then it is going to affect the collector voltage as well. That we had seen. Now, in this particular circuit, even if there is a change in collector current, it will come back to the original value of the collector current. That is the beauty of this particular design. Even if collector current changes, how it will come back to the previous value? Let me revise again whatever I had told yesterday. Imagine that if temperature increases, then the collector current increases. If the collector current increases, then the emitter current also increases, because collector current is same as emitter current. If emitter current increases, then the drop across RE increases. If the drop across this RE increases, in this particular circuitry we have kept this VBB constant. The voltage at the base we have kept constant by means of this R1 and R2, ignoring IB. Yesterday I had told that compared to the current going through R2, current going through IB, current going as IB is negligible. For example, if the current going through R1 and R2 is in milliampere, current going into the transistor's base is in microampere, There is a 1,000 times difference. So naturally the effect of IB can be ignored. So we can straight away come to a conclusion that the voltage at the base is constant irrespective of the temperature, because IB will change if temperature changes. Now here current is going through R1 and R2, that is not going to change when temperature changes because this current is in milliamperes. So we can safely assume that voltage at the base is constant. If voltage at the base is constant and if the emitter current is increasing due to temperature and if the voltage across RE is increasing, what happens here at the input loop? Just visualize this input loop from base to ground. Let us say we have 2 volts at the base. We have 2 volts at the base and across VBE we have 0.7. So naturally we will have 1.3 volts at the RE, across RE at the emitter. Again I will repeat, let us say we have 2 volts at the base. I will write it down. Let us say we have 2 volts at the base and across the base to emitter it is 0.7 volts. So naturally across the RE we will have 1.3 volts. Okay. Now due to increase in temperature, if there is a voltage drop across RE which is increasing, for example, let us say this 1.3 is going to become 1.4, then what will happen otherwise? If this is 1.3 is becoming 1.4, at the base we have kept 2 volts and this 2 volts is fixed because of R1 and R2. So effectively what happens is, if this is at 2 volts, if this becomes 1.4, naturally VBE has to become 0.6 now. VBE has to reduce because transistor is a active device. It is not a passive device. It is a PN junction. Now the voltage across this PN junction has to reduce. If the voltage across PN junction reduces, then naturally a transistor will come back to active region. If at all due to increase in current, if the transistor is going into saturation region, now across RE there will be increase in the voltage drop. So it will cause the decrease across VBE. That is because we have kept the base voltage constant. So if VBE reduces, now transistor cannot get into saturation. It has to come back to active region and thus even the collector current which is trying to increase has to reduce now. This will keep on happening throughout. For any temperature, this will keep on happening throughout, which means the transistor will never go into saturation. On the other hand, let us say the temperature reduces, then what happens? Let us say the temperature reduces. I will annotate in a different way now. Let us say we have kept 2 volts only here across the base. Now let us say temperature reduces. If temperature reduces, the collector current reduces. If the collector current reduces, imagine earlier we had 1.3 volts only across this RE. Now if temperature reduces, collector current reduces, and if emitter current reduces, let us say the voltage across RE becomes 1.2. If the voltage across RE becomes 1.2, at the base we have kept 2 volts itself. So if the current reduces, transistor gradually is turning to switch off. It is going towards cutoff region. Please understand this. In the earlier case, if temperature increases, transistor will move towards saturation region. Now in the present case, if temperature reduces, current is reducing and the transistor is moving towards cutoff region. Now what happens is 1.3 will reduce to 1.2. If 1.3 reduces to 1.2, we have kept the base voltage at 2 volts only. So what exactly happens is, now the base to emitter voltage will rise to 0.8, because across RE if it is 1.2, at the base it is 2. So naturally across the base to emitter junction it is 0.8. When it is 0.8, transistor which is trying to switch off will now again turn on and it will come back to active region. That way, irrespective of the temperature, this circuit is stable. Now this current can have a variation either due to temperature or due to variation in beta or due to variation in VBE itself. All these three reasons or three factors are counteracted by this particular circuitry. That is why this circuit is the most stable biasing circuit. So this is a brief revision about whatever we had discussed yesterday. Today, let us perform an accurate VDB analysis. What is the meaning of accurate VDB analysis? Yesterday's class, we completely ignored beta, thinking that we are keeping this base voltage constant, and when this base voltage is constant, we can easily find out the voltage across RE. When we find out the voltage across RE, we can easily find out IE. Once we find out IE, we can find out IC also, because both are same. Once we know this IC and IE, ICRC and IERE we know, and we can easily find out the value of VCE. And if you find out VCE, that is VCEQ, and if you find out IC, that is ICQ, the coordinates of the quiescent point. That analysis we did yesterday, but that particular analysis is an approximate analysis. Approximate analysis means we assume that beta can be ignored completely. We ignored beta just because of our theoretical assumption. Okay. Now, to be doubly sure, what we can do is, we can perform an accurate analysis. We can perform an accurate analysis considering the beta, and we can find out the difference between approximate analysis and accurate analysis. If it is satisfied, then we can say that voltage divider bias is a stable circuit and we can ignore beta at any point of time. But for that, we need sufficient technical evidence. As I told you earlier, we should keep on asking these 4 questions. 4W, 1H. What, where, when, why, how. Now we should keep on asking this question, how beta can be ignored, or why beta can be ignored, or where beta can be ignored. Now, whatever we did yesterday is approximate analysis. Whatever we are going to do now is accurate analysis. Through this accurate analysis, we will consider beta and we will try to find out whether our assumption is holding good. Okay, whether why beta can be ignored or how beta can be ignored, can we have a substantiate answer for the same. So we are going to do that today. Just look at this circuitry once again. We have this voltage divider network at the base, then we have a collector resistance and we have an emitter resistance. In the middle we have transistor. You should always visualize a power supply across this VCC and ground. We simply put a symbol plus VCC and we simply put a symbol ground. It does not mean that this is only a symbolic representation. Always you should visualize a power supply across. Let me annotate this. You should always visualize one power supply across this. Just to reduce our writing work, we write as plus VCC and ground. That is the habit of engineers and doctors. For that matter, any general professionals, when they don't want to write big things, they will invent symbols. For example, in mathematics, you will have more and more of symbols. There are symbols in algebra, there are symbols in geometry, there are symbols in calculus, everywhere. Subject of maths is full of symbols, because in maths there is less of theoretical writing or less of sentences. There is more of mathematical derivation or mathematical exercises or mathematical solutions. So in mathematics they use lot of symbols. Even in engineering, otherwise we use lot of symbols. So this plus VCC, or simply putting a circle at the top, is a symbol of power supply. Putting these 3 lines at the bottom is a symbol of ground. In general, ground means the point from which we measure the voltages. Ground does not mean 0 volts. Ground is normally 0 volts because we are using ground as a reference point for measuring voltages at the other nodes. That is when we generally say ground is 0 volts. Strictly speaking, ground need not be 0 volts, because if you take a multimeter and if you connect the negative probe to VCC and if you connect a positive probe to ground, then the multimeter will show you minus VCC. For example, instead of plus 12 volts, multimeter will show you minus 12 volts. That means it does not mean that ground is always 0 volts. Ground is the reference point. That is why voltage is always called as a potential difference between the 2 points. So that way, when we use this symbol ground and VCC, you should always visualize a battery or power supply. Now, what we can do now is, we can have an equivalent circuit for this. Now, if you look at the input side, we have VBB at the base. This VBB can be easily calculated. VBB or the base bias is the voltage drop across R2, which can be easily found out. VCC divided by R1 plus R2 is the current going through this branch, ignoring IB. Now, that current into R2 is the voltage across base. So, this is nothing but VCC divided by R1 plus R2 into R2. Or we can also write it as R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into VCC. That is this VBB. Okay, we can easily find out this VBB. After we find out VBB, we have to find out the effective resistance at the base. There is something called as AC ground, and there is something called as DC ground. Whatever you are seeing here at the circuit, this is called DC ground, because this is with reference to the DC voltages. Let us say we apply an AC signal here. Please recall the first class where I had shown you a transistor circuitry with the AC input. 0.2 volts, peak to peak, AC input I had discussed. Recall that. Now let us say we connect a small AC voltage to the base. Now when we connect AC voltage to the base, there is something called AC ground, which means this AC can come to the base, AC can also go to R2, AC can also go to R1. Now this AC signal which is fed here, let me write a coupling capacitor. We also call it as a blocking capacitor. And let us apply AC signal here. Now this AC signal has 3 paths. It can come into the base, it can go through R1, it can go through R2. What we want is, we want the AC to come into the transistor. But as we have the biasing resistors, energy does not know where to go. Energy will go wherever the path is available. For example, if you have a electric wire and if you have 3 branches there, current does not know where to go. Current will go through all the 3 branches of the wire. Same way, this AC signal will go through R1 also, R2 also, and through base also. Now, maximum AC will come through base only. Energy has a property of going through the path of least resistance most, which means, let us say we have these 2 resistors, R1 and R2, and then we have this base. Current will go more into the base. Current will go less into R1, less into R2. You can visualize one main pipe and 3 branches of the pipe with the one bigger branch and other 2 smaller branches. If you visualize that way, now if the water is coming from the main pipe, it will go into the bigger branch more and will go into the other 2 small branches less, because energy always goes through the least resistant path most. So, here AC signal will go through R1 also, it will go through R2 also, it will come into the base also. Now the signal which goes through R2, it will get grounded here. Small portion of AC signal gets grounded here because it is connected to ground. What will happen to signal going through R1? It will go to all the way to VCC. But what is VCC? What is VCC? It is nothing but a big battery. It is nothing but a big battery here, right? If there is this big battery is like a very big capacitor. What is basically a capacitor? Capacitor is the one which can store charges or it can have voltage. What is a battery? Battery is nothing but the one which is storing charges only within. And the battery can have a voltage, stable voltage. So if AC comes here, what happens to AC? AC will simply get absorbed into the battery because DC is more powerful than AC in this particular case. Here the AC is in millivolts, whereas the DC is in volts. So this AC which is coming to the VCC will simply get absorbed into the battery. That is when we have a terminology called AC ground. To make you understand what is the meaning of AC ground, I am explaining it in detail. AC ground means if AC comes into the circuitry, wherever it gets grounded, that is called AC ground. But for the circuitry, DC ground is only one. The lower portion itself is DC ground, that is only one. Whereas there are two AC grounds here now. Even VCC works like a ground for the AC signal. Why? Because the AC signal which comes to the power supply also gets absorbed by the power supply. Now you may ask me a question, instead of this power supply, what if we use a rectifier, sir? Because in most of our cases, we use rectifiers. We convert AC into DC. For example, mobile phone chargers or even in televisions, even for computers, AC is getting converted into DC. So in such case, the DC power supply will have a large capacitor. You recall the rectifier circuits which you had studied in the first year. You will have a half wave rectifier or you will have a full wave rectifier using diodes. Now at the output you will have a large electrolytic capacitor, and that capacitor is like a charge storage device there. It is supposed to remove the ripples which are present in the AC so that we will have a smooth DC. So if there is a rectifier working as a power supply, then naturally at VCC you will have a very large electrolytic power supply like this. You will have a very large electrolytic power supply. Now this very large electrolytic power supply is going to absorb all the AC. If AC is coming here, the AC comes to VCC, and there is a large capacitor, sometimes 1000 microfarad, sometimes 2200 microfarad, sometimes in very big power supplies, it can be 10,000 microfarad also. There are very large capacitors inside power supplies whenever we use rectifiers. So if AC comes here to the VCC, it is going to be absorbed by the capacitor itself. That is how there is a concept of AC ground. So now if there is AC ground here, how do we write an equivalent circuit for this in terms of AC? We have to write the equivalent circuit for this in terms of AC. So what we write is, to the base we write VBB, that is the voltage across this, and we also write Rin, that Rin is R1 parallel with R2. Now don't get confused. If you have any doubts, you can ask me the question again in the chat box. I will explain once again. Okay. Otherwise, I think you already understood what is meant by AC ground. Now, as far as this AC is concerned, R1's other end is at ground, R2's other end is at ground. Again remember, it is not with respect to DC, with respect to the input signal AC. R1's this end, upper end is grounded, R2's lower end is anyhow grounded. So naturally, as far as the AC is concerned, it is R1 parallel with R2. That is why here the input resistance to the circuitry with respect to AC is R1 parallel with R2. That is why we have this equivalent circuitry. Now look at this equivalent circuitry. I am going to annotate this equivalent circuitry now. Understand this very clearly. We have the DC voltage VBB. VBB we can easily find out. I have already told you, R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into VCC. That is VBB. Now with respect to the input signal AC, R1 and R2 are in parallel. So that is R1 and R2 are in parallel. What we can do is, instead of writing always R1 parallel with R2, we will simply write one series resistance Rin. That's all. Now this is the equivalent circuit for this particular voltage divider bias circuit. Now you may wonder why this much of a circus we are doing. We are doing this much of circus only for one reason. We want to have a very accurate analysis of voltage divider bias. That is why we want to represent this bigger circuit in a smaller manner. As far as the output is concerned, it is the same. RC remains as RC, RE remains as RE. Because once the AC comes here, it is going to be amplified here, right? Because of the switching action of the transistor, the signal will get amplified, and at the collector we will get the amplified form of AC. So there we don't have to worry, because VCE in terms of DC, we are going to set the Q point for that, and IC and IE are going to remain constant only. That we have seen already. So the output side remains same. You can recall that the output circuit is same as the emitter bias. So we can simply find out VCE equals VCC minus ICRC minus IERE. And when we assume IC and IE are same, we can simply write as VCE equals VCC minus IC into RC plus RE, which is same as that of emitter bias. I keep on repeating these equations because you have to keep on remembering these equations. More and more you listen to these equations, more and more you will remember. That is the purpose I am repeating the equations. Otherwise you have to keep on writing and you have to keep on practicing. That is also a good way of remembering. You will have to remember all these equations, because ultimately, whether it is your test or whether it is your exam, whatever you retain your memory, that is going to be your result. Always, whether it is in the BE degree or whether it is in life, always your memory decides your future. Whatever you retain in your memory, that is going to decide your future. Even in future, when you face a placement interview, in the placement interview, when they are going to ask you technical questions or aptitude questions, whatever you retain in your memory, based on that you are going to answer. Even in future, when you get into a job, you are going to learn about the skills about a particular job. Whatever skills you will learn, you will have to retain in the memory, and that is going to be your efficiency. So my dear students, please understand, your future or my future or anybody's future for that matter, any human being's future depends on the individual's memory. And memory is a God-given gift. Memory is a divine resource. So utilize your memory properly, understand the subjects properly. Only when you understand the subjects, then you will remember easily. If you do not understand the subject, then you will make a lot of effort to memorize, and that is not of much use. Without understanding, if you memorize anything, it is like a parrot chanting the mantra. If the parrot is chanting the mantra, if the parrot does not know the meaning of the mantra, there is no use of that mantra to the parrot. Same way, my dear students, you should not memorize something without understanding. If you understand, automatically you will remember. If you remember, you will like it. If you like it, then you will understand it. And that is how you will learn. So, why am I repeating all these things again and again? So that only when I repeat these things again and again, and when you listen to this attentively, you will remember it and your brain will store it. And whatever your brain stores, that is your primary memory. Notes or textbook or writing or whatever, that is all secondary memory. Your brain is the primary memory. Okay. There is a question here. Let me address the question. How can the capacitor of VCC hold AC and not DC? Capacitor of VCC is not holding AC, it is holding DC itself. Capacitor of VCC is charged, and you can visualize the rectifier circuit which you had studied in first year. Capacitor's one end is connected to ground, other end is connected to the output of the bridge rectifier. So capacitor is holding DC only, it is not holding AC. If capacitor is connected in series, then it is passing AC, it is blocking DC. Okay, but when you connect it in parallel, because it is blocking DC, it is holding DC at that time. That is when we say capacitor is getting charged. Okay, so when we want the capacitor to retain the charge, we connect it in parallel to the circuitry. Whenever we want capacitors to pass AC signal, we connect it in series to the circuitry. It is we who decide how we want the capacitor to be used. Otherwise, the capacitor's basic property is that it will block DC, it will pass AC. That's all. Conversely, inductor will block AC past DC. Conversely, resistor will block both AC and DC. As far as the resistor is concerned, it will block both AC and DC because the name itself says resistor means resisting. The name capacitor means it has a capacity to store. The name inductor means it has a capacity, it has a inductance to induce flux, magnetic flux. That is how these names are derived. All these names are wonderful names. What is the meaning of transistor? Transistor is transference of resistance. Transference of resistance. In the cutoff region, very high resistance. In the saturation region, very low resistance. In the active region, somewhere in the middle range. That is why transistor is nothing but transference of resistance. So all these names are highly meaningful names. Okay, let me continue now. So I hope you have understood this particular circuitry now. Always visualize this because I am going on to the next page. So you will have to remember this circuit in the next page as well. VBB with the series Rin. Rin is nothing but R1 parallel with R2. Let me proceed. A small notes here. The impedance seen by the input signal is R1 parallel with R2, as I have already shown you, as VCC acts as AC ground. Remember this. Always in circuit analysis, we will keep discussing about DC ground and AC ground throughout in electronic circuits. Throughout, until final year also. Even after final year also, you will have to keep on analyzing AC ground separately, DC ground separately. Now, as IE is beta into IB, the input resistance is beta times larger than RE. So, Rin is beta into RE. That it is our visualization. See, at the input there is IB, at the output there is IE. And in general, IE and IC, when we equate them, IE will be beta times IB. So, we can say that the resistance at the input side is beta times RE larger. That way we can say. So, we can say that Rin is beta into RE. Now, you will say, sir, Rin is R1 parallel to R2, right? Yes, correct. R1 parallel to R2 is physically present there. Okay, we are physically connecting two resistors. This is the actual resistance. But it can also be that as there is a beta inside the transistor, the impedance or the resistance at the input can be beta times that of Re. That way we can say. So, Rin is equivalent to beta Re also we can say, because we have to consider beta now. Hence, if the effect of beta has to be ignored on the Q point, then Rin has to be much lesser than beta into Re. Understand this sentence? If the effect of beta has to be ignored on the Q point, then Rin has to be much lesser than beta into Re. What does it mean? It means that R1 and R2 have to be passing current in milliampere, not in microampere. So, if that R1 parallel to R2 is much lesser than this beta Re, then beta can be ignored. Otherwise, beta cannot be ignored. Please understand that. Just because we have done the approximate analysis earlier, we cannot simply come to an assumption that whatever value of R1, R2, RC, Re, it will remain stable always. It is not so. We should take care that R1 parallel with R2 must be lesser than beta into Re. Only then this circuit will be stable. I had told you this point earlier, right? Current going through R2 must be larger than the current which is going into the base. Only then we can ignore IB. Otherwise, let us say current going through R2 is also in microampere, current going into the base is also in microampere, then the IB cannot be ignored and beta cannot be ignored. So, I had told you yesterday also, we choose R1 and R2 in such a way that the current here is always in milliampere, so that the base current is in microampere. There will be at least 1000 times of difference. That is the meaning of this sentence. Okay. The meaning of the sentence is, if the effect of beta has to be ignored on the Q point, then R in has to be much lesser than beta into Re. That means R1 and R2 have to be of lesser value. They should not be of a larger value. So, thus, if the circuit values are chosen such that R1 parallel with R2 is less than 0.01 into beta Re, then it is called as a stiff VDB circuit, as a 100:1 rule is satisfied. You can see here, if we choose this R1 parallel with R2 in such a way that R1 parallel with R2 together is less than 0.01 beta into Re, then it is called as a stiff VDB circuit, because the 100:1 rule is satisfied. 100:1. You can see here 0.01 means this times it becomes 100 times. So if at all you bring this 0.01 this side, it is R1 parallel with R2 100 times. So beta Re will be 100 times larger than R1 parallel with R2. We can say that it is a stiff VDB circuit. Stiff means we can always assume that IB can be ignored fully. This is one plain definition. You don't have to worry much about why we call it as stiff. There is a very beautiful book for electronic basics. It is called as Electronic Principles by Malvino. You can download the PDF which is available in the internet, or if you want later on, I can send you the book as well. Yesterday's I have uploaded the Google class. In the Google class, I have uploaded our textbook called Boylstad and Nashelski, Electronic Devices and Circuits, 11th edition. Authors are Boylstad and Nashelski. That is the primary textbook for our course here now for analog electronic circuitry. But you can refer to this textbook also. You can also refer to a book called Electronic Principles by Malvino. I will upload this book also today into the Google class. You can go through that. Yesterday I had uploaded the content selection from the textbooks. Students can go through that and you can mark those topics from which textbook we have chosen which topics for syllabus. You can go through that. Don't just depend on the notes always. Along with the notes, you read textbooks also, because notes is like a condensed form. Everything we cannot put it in the notes. Notes you can always refer whenever you have a test or exam. But for the understanding purpose, you will have to have a habit of reading the textbooks also. So, in the Malvino book, he uses this terminology, stiff VDB circuit. That is why I have put it here. Actually, I like that particular book, Malvino, very much. It is a very simple book for people to understand electronics, but without compromising on the technical quality. So that way it's a very good book. In each chapter, at the end of that particular book, at the end of each chapter, there are multiple choice questions. So if you can go through those multiple choice questions and if you can remember those answers, half of your placement preparation is done. You can use this book for lifetime for revising the basics of electronics. That way it is a very beautiful book. Okay, in that book he calls this as stiff VDB circuit. In addition, if 10:1 rule is followed instead, then R1 parallel to R2, if it is less than 0.1 into beta Re, such circuit is called as firm VDB circuit. So he uses the term, Malvino uses the term stiff VDB and firm VDB. But you don't have to worry much about these terminologies. We are going to check whether accurate analysis and approximate analysis are going to hold good for ignoring beta or not. So let us see a small derivation here now. The derivation with respect to the previous circuitry. Let me take a second for sipping water. Okay. Applying KVL at the input side, visualize VBB and R1 parallel with R2 is the input resistance. Applying KVL at input side, VBB minus IB into R1 parallel with R2 minus VBE minus IERE equals 0. Just look at the circuit. VBB minus IB into R1 parallel with R2 and minus VBE minus IERE is equivalent to 0. So, you have R in, you have VBE, you have RE, and you have VBB here. R in is nothing but R1 parallel with R2. That is how we are getting this expression. VBB minus IB into R1 parallel with R2 minus VBE minus IR equals 0. Or VBB minus VBE equals IB into R1 parallel with R2 plus beta into IB into RE. We can always write IE as beta into IB, because IE we can equate always to IC. Now, IB equals VBB minus VBE divided by beta into RE plus R1 parallel with R2. From the same expression, you optimize the LHS and RHS and get an equation for IB. IB is VBB minus VBE divided by beta into RE plus R1 parallel with R2. Now, based on this, we can simply find out IE. IE is IB multiplied by beta. So, finally, IE is VBB minus VBE divided by this beta can be replaced this way. There is already beta into RE. This beta at the numerator can be brought to the denominator. So, we can write RE plus R1 parallel with R2 divided by beta. So, we can find out IE. Now, in the accurate analysis, we can actually find out IB, we can find out IE, and then we can have an exercise in the next class, because today already last few minutes are there. In the next class, we will have an exercise where we will actually find out the quiescent point using approximate analysis as well as with accurate analysis, and we can come to a conclusion about the stability of the voltage divider bias circuit. So, in the next class, we will solve an exercise. Until then, you remember this particular derivation. This is a simple derivation, but it's an important derivation. You should understand how we wrote the equivalent circuit for this, and using the equivalent circuit, first we write the Kirchhoff's voltage law at the input side and we apply this. And we get this formula. We get a formula for IB. Now, from the IB, we get a formula for IE. In the IE, we slightly replace this beta and we have an equation called VBB minus VBE divided by RE plus R1 parallel with R2 divided by beta. Using this, we can find out IE. Once we find out IE, we can find out VCE. And we can find out the Q point using approximate analysis as well as using accurate analysis, and we can compare the results. We will do that in the next class. I will be posting the attendance link in the Google class. I am ending the class now.